10 o'clock, which means we are going to get started on our Wednesday morning life. And this morning, we are talking with Professor Michelle Brown. She's an English professor here at Lone Star College, and she was gracious enough to offer to join us this morning for some chat about how to write creatively, because I know I get stuck when I'm trying to write different things, and I get really interested in writing and reading other people's work, which we are always happy to recommend you a good writer and a good book. But in case you wanted to take up a new hobby during this time and you wanted to, say, chronicle your quarantine adventures or come up with something to, mentally broaden the world and horizon in which you live, we have Michelle here to give us some introduction to creative writing. Michelle, if you would, please.
You bet. Hi. So it's just going off of what you just said. It sounds like we're all writing a journal of the plague year, right? A la Defoe. Okay. So
well, you can write some nice fantasy to escape. That's an option too.
Okay.
Create your own world.
Well, that was actually going to be my question. I wanted to start out. I don't want to make assumptions about where anyone is as a writer, and so the first thing I wanted to do before I started talking was to invite you to talk about where you are as a writer, and do you belong to a community of writers? Are you in a writing workshop? So I just wondered who is here. Do you write? What do you write? So just to go around and give a brief introduction, I thought I would tell you who I am first, just to get it going. I am a poet. I do publish. I have work out in Rattle magazine in the current issue. I have work upcoming in Pembroke magazine, and I've published in lots of literary magazines in my career. That has been my focus and my goal. I don't have a book published. I just really keep my eye on the literary magazines. That's where I like to be, and so that it works for me. And I think it's important to ask that question: what do you want out of your writing? In terms of editing, I'm the managing editor of the Barker's Voice, our campus literary magazine. It's a student magazine, but we faculty members guide from the side on that. So that, what else? Just in terms of being in higher ed, this is my 15th year at Lone Star College, Sci-Fair, and my 30th year. This is my 30th year teaching higher ed. I've taught at Sam Houston State University for most of the 90s, Oklahoma State for the first 5 years of the new millennium, and then over to Lone Star. So anyway, that's me. As far as fiction, what fiction cred do I have? I do write fiction every other year. I do National Novel Writing Month so that I can know what I'm talking about with my students when I teach fiction. So I'm not teaching as an outsider there. So talk to me. Tell me where you are as writers. What do you do? Somebody mic is on.
Share? Sure.
There you go. Thanks.
I don't really do any creative writing. I write a lot for work. I work for a nonprofit, so I write a lot of stories, and I get to tell a lot of wonderful stories about the work that we're doing. But I'm excited to hear more about, what you have to say and your passion on how to get started, because I would love to be more creative in my writing instead of just telling stories. I'd love to tell stories from my own heart and my own mind. So I'm excited to hear your presentation today.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Rachel, I see your mouth moving. Oh, okay. There we go.
I always journal. I mean, I've been journaling since I was 9 or something. So that's what I like to do. I don't really do a lot of creative writing in the sense of writing fiction or anything like that, but I certainly appreciate those forms of writing. But I've never really understood how to, I always feel like, the strongest writing is writing about what you know. So I feel, at least, the writing that connects with me most is people who are writing from their experience. So I've always connected more with like memoirs and, things like that. So I'm curious about how you kind of turn that into fiction.
Okay, so I do a little bit of writing. I actually am the hostess of the Sci-Fair Writers group here, well, here virtually on campus, so to speak, which is one of our adult programs. So I really enjoy getting to hear other people's creative story writing. As I have frequently told them, I inflict them with my terrible poetry every so often. And sometimes I write short stories. I've never yet made it through NaNoWriMo, where you're supposed to write an entire novel in a month in November, which is coming up. Oh dear, we're going to take on that challenge this year and see what happens. But I have met some awesome NaNoWriMo writers who have, pushed through, and some have even published, and it's like, my goodness. But anyway, so terrible poetry aside, do any of you guys write creatively or want to?
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, good morning. So I haven't done creative writing for a long time. I was a short story and poetry writer in high school and college, and recently actually brought home from a recent video my high school and college poetry notebooks, which I am both very excited but also sort of dreading going through. I am a copy editor, I guess, for the Barker's Voice, which is so much fun to read our students' writing. It's really a treat every year. But I have to confess to you that I have a story rattling around in my head that I want to try and get to. I recently learned that the largest mushroom factory in the world was in my hometown on Cape Cod for a few years in the early 1910s. And there's just something about that mushroom factory in my hometown that I want to try and write about. So that's me.
Fair enough. I mean, Roald Dahl somewhere with the chocolate factory. I think he mentioned once that there was one near his hometown. So work with what you got. Let's see, maybe you will write the next great children's classic, Jane. Who knows? All right, does anybody else want to contribute to the discussion about what they're writing, or if they, write anything specific? Okay, so that's cool. I know sometimes folks can be a little bit shy about sharing their own writing. I know sometimes I am, so fair enough, guys. Fair enough.
Okay. Actually, you've given me some ideas about where to start, though, if you want me to just leap right in there.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to take a second to mute all of us and then to unmute you, Michelle, so that we don't get, the fun feedback loop.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, I created an outline for today. I just wasn't quite sure, where everybody was in their own writing, and like I said, I didn't want to make assumptions that anybody was starting out and had not really written before. Because I get irritated sometimes when I join, when somebody's lecturing to me and I'm like, I already know this, I know this. So this helps a lot. Thank you. All right. The first thing is I do want to recommend that if we're writing, that we do join a writing community. There's already a workshop going in the library. I recommend joining that workshop since it's already set up, it's already there for you. Yeah, absolutely. Join a community because we encourage each other in a community. We have an automatic audience then, and we get feedback, which of course it's difficult not to crave when we're writing. We want to know how do you react to this even after we've written perhaps a paragraph. So it gives you that audience that you need. I have on my outline the whole writing process from invention through publication. But I wanted to, since we talked about, Jane, you mentioned you already have a story brewing, what to do in a situation like that. We have an adage in creative writing, which is a writer writes. And the notion is that we write every day, that we have that discipline. So I'd say, to begin, start with the discipline and set up a time that is sacred, that does not get interrupted, that so you have a sacred space for writing, that you have a particular time that you sit down, that you perhaps set a timer, and then write for that time. Before I had my writing discipline established, I was pretty scattershot about it. And I can actually remember the night that it got real for me. I had to I had to set a mood. I wouldn't do this now, but I was very young, and so I just thought a candelabra was the way to go in my youth. So I had candles going, and set everything up in a certain way, dimmed the lights, and set a timer for 20 minutes. And that worked, actually. So I've ditched the candelabra. Don't need that anymore. That was a bit pretentious. But I do need the timer. So set a timer for, I think 20 minutes is a perfect amount of time. That's about the length of an attention span, before we've said everything and then we kind of run out of things to say. And then, you can take a break, you can come back tomorrow, or if you're really going, maybe not take a break. There's something called the Pomodoro Method that I don't know if any of you have heard of, but it's that to students use it to study. And there are all of these Pomodoro technique videos out on YouTube that you can actually sit and this is for study, and so you'll see people sitting with their books open in a library or in their room studying for 20 minutes or however long. There's even one that's 2 hours, and especially during quarantine, I find that can be helpful. That watching somebody study. It's like having them in the room with me, like being at the library where other people are working around you. So I get that sort of peer pressure to focus and work and not get distracted. So Pomodoro, like the Pomodoro tomato, Pomodoro technique, if anybody's interested in that. I said that I had this set up for the writing process, this outline that I made. So I'm going to kind of go back to what I have over here. The first stage of writing, no matter what kind of writing we're doing, of course, is the invention stage, and it can be very helpful to brainstorm, mind map, or cluster. We used to call it clustering. We call it mind mapping now. To outline or free write. Free writing is what I was just talking about, which is that, talking or writing for setting the timer and then just brain dump, just whatever it is. So Jane, thinking about your story, I might sit down and set the timer and then just brain dump everything that you're thinking about that mushroom factory. And see what you get at the end of that, but without stopping to never stopping to revise when we're doing that free writing, but just writing, just get as much down on the page. This is also a method for defeating writer's block. And so I have a little note down a little further in my outline about writer's block, which is, so often when people will talk to me out in the community, when they find out what I do, they'll say, oh, I've always wanted to write, but I get writer's block and I just can't. Writers will tell us that writer's block does not exist, that there's no such thing. I once asked the poet W.S. Merwin about writer's block, and he called it ego. He said writer's block is just ego. It's your ego getting in the way. So, as I say, I've found that the best way to defeat writer's block is to set that timer and just write whatever you're thinking, because then you're no longer staring at the blank page. An old technique that still works really well is to dim the computer monitor screen if we're writing on the computer, so we can't even see our own words and we're just typing. So that even eliminates the need to worry about what we're writing until after we have something written. And so never indulge this notion of writer's block. Just don't believe in it. Just write. Then let's see what else was, in terms of back to this notion of invention, I just want to give a plug to the notion of outlining for National Novel Writing Month in particular. So if anybody is looking ahead to NaNoWriMo in November, which is where, of course, we write an entire novel in 1 month, 50,000 word novel in 1 month. This, again, is setting the timer every day to get our word count, dividing up the number of words per day. I think it's something like 3,336 or something words per day. Is that right? Does anybody know? To make it through the whole month?
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that number is etched in my brain because I've written to that goal often enough during NaNoWriMo. But have an outline going into that month so that you know exactly where your whole novel is going, if you can. And that will help with those days that you're going, I don't know what to say. I have to write 3,000 words and I don't know what to say. Well, you have an outline that you can follow. And also to have all of the characters, the main characters, sketched out. So character maps before NaNoWriMo are a really big help. Know who they are. Hemingway talked about people in his stories, not characters. So he talked about people when we see people, and I'm sorry, I'm butchering the quote. I can't say the quote exactly, but that people are icebergs. So of course we're only seeing that little bit above the water, and the rest is beneath the surface. So the audience may only see that tiny little bit, but we as the writers know everything that's underneath. So a really good character map that your character's favorite ice cream. It never makes it to the page, but you know what it is as the writer, that kind of thing. I'm going to pause for a moment. I've said a lot really fast. Does anybody have any questions about anything I've said so far?
Okay, thus far I'm not really seeing any questions, though.
Okay.
I was thinking about the idea of creativity and being very freeform, because every time I've tried NaNoWriMo, I'm what in the NaNoWriMo community is what's called a pantser. I know, right? It means that you're writing in the seat of your pants. You're just flying through it and trying to see what comes out of you. Is there any value in being a pantser and kind of going off the outline a little bit and seeing where it leads?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can do it, then yes, do that. I find that I can do that to a point, and then about a week and a half into it, suddenly I'm not a pantser anymore, and suddenly I've perhaps even finished my novel. Not that I've written 50,000 words, more that the story's over because I didn't really plan enough to say in my novel. And so that can be a little bit unnerving. Then I'm revising and not getting my word count every day. So if you can write 50,000 words as a pantser, I'm impressed. I am impressed. This is a virtual high five to you. Yeah.
I wish I could say I totally scored that high five, but I have yet to manage 50,000 words or a finished plot line, just pantsing it. I just really struggle because the characters are very clear in my mind. and I can see them and I know what they're doing and I know the setting, but then it's like, okay, they get to a certain point and then it stops. It's like, okay, we don't know what to do with them now. They're just floating.
Yeah, they look like in video games when you hit pause and they're just standing there doing this. And you're, waiting for you as the player to do something with them. Just have you ever seen that in the video game? They're just standing around waiting. It's like, are you going to do something? Yeah, I see that in my head very clearly with the characters as I write. But again, think of them as people, and then they're not characters, and then maybe they won't just stand there frozen and waiting for you. Okay. So here's as a fellow nano person. Oh, wait, let me see. If we are new to spending time, do you have any suggestions for tool? It faded. Let's see. What was that?
If you are new to spending time doing creative writing, do you have any suggestions for tools or prompts to get us started on our 20 minutes a day?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's part of my outline too. So I have, the college provides an app for us called Visio, and I can actually do some mind mapping once I've brainstormed by using Visio. Do you mind if I share my screen? Okay, now I've got a mind map going for somebody else's poem right now because um, I'm teaching American Lit this semester. So here is an outline that I did using Visio, not an outline, rather a mind map that I created for Song of Myself in Visio. So that's kind of fun as an app. There's also an app but not everybody's going to have Visio. So where else could we use mind maps? There's a mind map extension for Google Chrome that I shared with my students because it's free, and so they were able to use that to create their own mind maps for what we've been reading in class. And then we can also use drawing tools in any word processing program if we want to use mind maps. I'm kind of a big mind mapper these days. I just I like to take the chaos and try to establish order on it by using those. Then Scrivener is good. Oh, Jamboard. Okay, cool. Thanks, Jane. Then Scrivener is a really powerful writing program. This is one that writers will use to put together novels. It has bulletin boards. So in the bulletin boards that are built into Scrivener, you can actually pin images, so pictures of your characters. I like to do Google image searches just for random people and start looking at them and then pinning them to the bulletin board and creating lives for them. And so you can, there are note cards built into Scrivener, so you can, I use the note card function. It looks like little note cards like you would have, that you would handwrite. And I use those for chapters in Scrivener, so outlines with the chapters, and then there's the writing with the word processor built into Scrivener as well. When you get to the end of the writing process, when you have a novel, it will even format the novel for you to send out to an agent, or if you're skipping that, to a publishing house. So Scrivener is incredibly powerful. It's not free. It's not a free program. I think the last time I purchased Scrivener, it was $40. It's probably gone up since then. But yeah, I think that's a great program to use.
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of writers doing something similar where they'll have what's called a vision board, but it's an actual physical, like bulletin board with tacks and that, where they'll tack up pictures of celebrities or connect people in the plot line like you see in those old detective movies.
Yes.
Is that physical act of doing things on a board versus virtual, do you think that's assistive? Do you think that's necessary or interesting? Because I know some of my favorite authors have based a character off of someone, and in the end, they end up saying, And it's actually meant to look like the celebrity, or it's,
Mhm.
you know, it's created sort of that idea that we recycle from what we know.
Sure. Um, and and I would never say, I, what am I trying to say? If something works for a writer, I say do whatever is working for you. I'm not somebody who's going to come in and say, oh, you can't do that. No, that's not legitimate or whatever. No, legitimate is whatever gets you writing. So no, I'm good with that. I think that's a great idea. And which kind of leads me also to this notion of fan fiction. I know that there are a lot of detractors in creative writing, in the world of creative writing. I'm not one of those. I think fan fiction brings a lot of young people to writing, and again, whatever works to get you here, I'm good with that and welcome. And then of course my focus in college and with my university background is literary fiction and poetry, and serious writing, as we say, right? Which is, of course, terribly dismissive and not the way we should think about it. Writing is writing, and so, again, whatever gets you writing and whatever is working for you and making you happy. I think happiness is actually where, or joy. Does it bring you joy? Okay, good. Let's do it. But if you're trying to work something out on the page, then do that. Whatever brings you there, brings you to it is good. What else? I was going to see. This was a a point at which I thought we would do a writing exercise. If I can, would you indulge me on that? Are you willing to do a writing exercise?
All right, so I'm totally in. I'm going to unmute everybody and see what they have to say.
Okay.
I'm getting some I'm ins, yes, pleases.
Okay, wonderful. All right. We're going to actually apply what I was talking about with the timed writing. We're going to write for 10 minutes to a prompt. Oh, and we had that question about prompts. Will somebody help me to remember that, about writing prompts? Because I do have sources for prompts for you. But the prompt that we're going to use is it's the very first one that I use in my creative writing classes with students. And the purpose of this prompt is to demonstrate to everyone that we can do it. So that, again, the notion that that writer's block is not real, that we can all write. And so we're going to, set a timer for 10 minutes. I'm going to actually set my phone because that's the one I usually use. There's the clock app. Where is it? Here it is. That has a timer and it's already set for 10 minutes for class, apparently. So, okay, 10 minutes. The prompt is I remember. We're going to write the words I remember, and then we're just going to brain dump what I remember using sentences and paragraphs without stopping, without second guessing what we're writing. Are you ready? Go. I remember.
Are we at 10? Michelle, you're muted.
I thought I unmuted myself. Sorry about that. I was saying that, yeah, we made it with, we had about 8 seconds to spare when we stopped, but yeah, we made it for 10 minutes. So how did that feel? Was everyone able to write? Was anybody not able to write? Anybody want to chime in there? If you want to say something in the chat window, that'll be fine.
Don't call me out like that, Trev.
I was able to write
Okay, good.
stream of consciousness stuff and
Yes, yes.
I wrote, I thought I heard you, did you say item number? That what you said?
An item number? I don't think so. But 10 minutes, I said 10 minutes.
That's okay. Sometimes if we mix up a prompt, we end up with a more interesting story, I think.
Okay, yes.
I'll admit I ended up with rather terrible poetry again.
Okay.
There's some questions about the meter and what's happening in this. Okay, anybody want to discuss?
Or share?
Well, I thought it was, this is Brad. I thought it was interesting because I started out with an initial story idea, but your prompt threw me off. And so I actually started out by saying, I have no idea what I'm going to write.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I got that out of my head, I was able to start writing.
Good.
And it took me into a path that I was not expecting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I remember, just reminded me, I remember the 5th of November, so I have some bad stanzas about Guy Fawkes Day, if anybody's seen for Vendetta. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree, Bronwyn. There's always an issue with self-criticizing your writing.
Mm-hmm.
We are our own harshest critics.
Yep. I had an experience like Brad's. I didn't expect to end up where I ended up either. I was, I thought that I would go back to the beginning of the pandemic and remember from that point. So not like way distant, but just that recently. And that took me to a conversation with a former student. We were having these chats that would go on and on and on in the text boxes. And then that took me to a dream. So who, you just don't know where you're going to end up with the I would prompt, but that's okay because you get the words down. Does anybody want to share what they actually wrote? I think we could do, maybe even just a snippet of it since we don't have that much time left. Maybe the best part of it. Okay, go ahead, Brad.
All right. Keep in mind you asked for it. I remember. My mind is blank. I wonder if that's my pride looking me up. I remember when I tried to write a paragraph on command and I couldn't. I remember because it's what is happening now. I remember starting the writing for my fantasy novel. It was a stream of thought piece I started for NaNoWriMo. It was inspired by a D&D adventure, a short one that you could plug into any world and play just to get players to start working together. The same adventure I used to build a dungeon dive for my daughter when we started playing together. The same one I randomly picked up one day in a bookstore and stayed with me ever since. Some things just get stuck. I wonder if there's a reason for that. I remember in the room was a mother, a writer, and her daughter. She was a loud French Canadian. Of course, I had no idea she was a French Canadian, but within a few minutes, she made sure to let us all know. That's where the loud part came in. I wonder, her daughter seemed simultaneously annoyed, embarrassed, and admiring of her mother. It was not hard to see why. She was an accomplished author, and she dominated the room. I'll go ahead and stop there.
Okay, thank you. That
Good.
a loud, did you say a loud French Canadian?
Yes.
Because
It's actually a lovely
jumped
woman,
right out.
but yeah,
Yeah.
she made sure everybody knew that she was French Canadian. So
I can understand wanting to be recognized where you're from. I am sometimes told I am a loud Kentuckian, which is a bit of an oxymoron.
Nice. I just like that the loud, that was such a memorable detail, the loud French Canadian. So yeah, good. Did anybody else want to share any of what they wrote? Nope. Okay.
Unless you wish to be put through terribly metered poetry, I would advise against it.
Okay. If it's truly terribly metered, I might cringe a little. It's true.
I don't want to make anybody cringe at life. I can bring this to writers group where they will very kindly critique me and make me sure that my meter is correct. I guess I could do a little bit of it just as a joke.
I guess I could paste some of mine in the chat, but I'm not.
Sure.
I don't know if I'm not really comfortable reading it out. So
okay.
Yeah, if you all want to paste in chat, I can read out. That's part of what I do with the writers group, is that I actually read their work aloud. So I am used to reading for writing.
Yep.
Yeah, mine is not pretty.
Okay. Neither is mine. It may be a difference in meter and subject matter, but.
Okay, I'll put in most of it.
Okay.
I am leaving out just there's a little bit at the front, at the top that I'm gonna. No, but yeah, it's kind of dark.
That's fine.
Sorry.
Okay.
What we say in the writing workshop in class is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That's not 100% true here since you're recording, but I do recommend for your workshops that you recognize the sacredness of workshop, and there's some basic rules about workshop that. What we say in class is that we don't censor. Now but we also don't bring material that would be inappropriate. I'm thinking specifically porn. We don't bring porn to workshop, right? but otherwise, we really don't. We speak our truth. We say what needs to be said in workshop. So as long as we have the Vegas rule in place, then we feel safe. So who wants to read what Bronwyn wrote? Can we get somebody to read that aloud? Did you want to do it, Rachel?
Sure.
Okay.
She took me in grudgingly. My mother raged, but I had escaped. My mother wouldn't allow me access to my clothing so that I could go to school without having to wear the same outfit 2 days in a row, but I had escaped. I kept escaping again and again, running away. When I ran off to another country, halfway across the world, my mother said, "She'll be back. She always comes back." I remember living on that island so far away from everyone I knew, riding the bus to a rural school to teach English to children who never laid eyes on a foreigner before. The buses always kept the windows open. Fresh air was abundant. Fresh air was important. So different from the world of recycled, chilled air that I'd been raised on. And I gazed at the jungles we passed on our way down the mountain, moving slowly down zippered 2-lane roads. And even though I had escaped, I longed to escape further. And yet I hadn't realized that the well-being I sought lay within, not without. Okay, Bronwyn, that's deep.
That's strong.
Yeah, I mean, that's my style. I'm just very I just journal, and I like to write about personal experiences, and I like to read about personal experiences as well.
Yes.
I did have an intense childhood, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
It sounds like it, but it sounds like you have a lot to say about it. And I am going to recommend that you work with, if you're interested, work with Roberta Short here on campus, because Dr. Short's focus is memoir. So
Okay.
she is all about creative nonfiction, and she teaches an excellent creative writing class from what students have told me. So I highly recommend for your project, which it sounds like you have a project. You know you journal, you know that you're writing about your own life. Get in touch with Dr. Short.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to my outline now. And because I was going to talk with you about prompts. Somebody mentioned where do you get prompts? And so one of the writing exercises that we do in class is we set the timer and we generate our own set of prompts. We just start listing. So because as we saw with Bronwyn, everybody has their own project. Well, and Brad too. These are two really different projects going on. One is D&D, one is memoir. The prompts that work for me will not necessarily work for you. The prompts for Bronwyn are not going to necessarily work for Brad, and vice versa. So I think it can be really useful to just start, to set the timer and just start generating a list of prompts. If nothing is happening there are books that have them as well. We have lots of them in poetry. There's The Practice of Poetry is one of the books that I go back to. I've used for the last 30 years. And there's always something in there that gets me writing again. One of my favorites as a poet is to write between the lines of a poet whose writing I admire. So I will often go to Seamus Heaney. First, I'll type a poem into my word processor. Then I will put spaces between the lines, and then I'll start writing my own lines between his lines, and then I'll remove his poem and see what I have. And it's not his themes. I'm not writing in Ireland on Irish subjects. I'm not doing that. But somehow something in his voice will draw something from me. So books of prompts. And then there are writing prompts all over Pinterest. If you know that website with the bookmarks, I go to Pinterest for prompts for classes if my own prompts are, well, not for classes so much as for creative writing club. That's really where I was using them. But if my prompts for class don't really translate to the club, when I was running creative writing club, I would go to Pinterest sometimes to find prompts because I just didn't have anything really fresh for them. And so that would be writing the prompts. As far as other elements, parts of the outline that I created, I have for the poem, the story, or the novel, just I wanted to impress upon everybody the idea of writing all the way to the end of what we write in the first draft, if possible. For National Novel Writing Month, for example, we could really short circuit a novel if we start revising too soon. We ought to just see the plot all the way through to the end on that first draft before we come back and then start trying to revise. I mean, that's hard, but I've seen with students who are attempting NaNoWriMo, seeing them undermine their own progress by beginning to revise too soon. And so that's just something I wanted to put out there. And let's see, be fearless in revision is a note I have. workshop the writing only when it's ready for workshop, not prematurely, because sometimes, you know, once we start getting feedback and if it's critical, that might prevent us from continuing the writing. But when we are in workshop, to workshop with humility. In my writing classes, I don't permit students to defend the writing as we're going around the room. So the person whose work is being workshopped, they have to be silent until we get all the way around the room with the feedback, and then they get their voice back. And they have to take notes when they're receiving the feedback. It seems to work
Okay,
out.
so we have a question here. Do you prefer
Sure.
to write pen and paper or type when you are writing? Do you find that you have a different style or feel when using one versus the other?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. I have a little notebook that I carry in my purse with me everywhere I go. So if I have an idea for writing, I write it down immediately. If I'm sitting in a meeting, for example, isn't that where yeah, we zone out. Suddenly we have this great writing idea, but we're in a meeting, we're at work, we're not supposed to zone out. And so, yeah, that's when I will I pull that out of my purse. I write the idea down, I close it up, I set it aside so I don't lose the idea. I have been known to get that out while driving and write and drive at the same time, but it's just to catch the idea. It's not like writing a whole poem or something. So just to answer the question, I don't think it matters once we've established the discipline for writing. As long as we are writing, anything goes. So I can write on a computer. I can handwrite, because this is a very long established habit that doesn't rely on anything. In fact, it's that notion of writer's block. I'm not going to set myself up to think that I can only write on a screen, and if I don't have my screen, I can't write, because that would be an invitation to writer's block, if that makes sense.
That's really interesting to me because when I handwrite, I tend to come out with poetry almost every time.
Wow.
But if I'm typing, it's almost always more likely to be a short story or the beginnings of novels. So for me, the medium switch is like a switch between genre, and I've heard a few other writers say that too, but
Mm-hmm.
I like that you're so very fluid.
Sort of ambidextrous with my writing in
Yes.
a way.
Bronwyn has said, I really like a combination of prose and poetry. I like that too. I've seen some really great novels that do that.
Yeah.
Bernadine Evaristo. So if you're interested in any of those books right now, we are currently having curbside services, so you can place some of these wonderful works of writing and literature on hold, and you can pick them up. You can also place anything you want on hold, because if it's in our collection, other than the reference section, you can actually ask to get it and to pick it up. Yeah, what a wonderful, wonderful lesson on writing. We really appreciate you joining us for life, Michelle.
Thank you for inviting me.
There was someone, and I cannot remember who, so credit if anyone knows, that said, writing is life. If you know who the quotation belongs to, insert citation here. But I really do believe writing is life, and today life was about writing. And we greatly appreciate your contributions and your teaching us so very much.
Thank you.
And next week, we are having since it is October, we are having a live program on book historia. We are actually having Allie Avis, the Special Collection References Librarian from the Smithsonian, come and talk to us about all the different types of books that she has found, some delightful, some deadly, including books that are bound with arsenic and bones and, very kind of Halloween creepy archive. that we are bringing to life next week. So do join us for that. And you, as always, you can watch the recordings on our YouTube channel. Do we have any questions for our Ms. Brown? All right.
Thank you so much.
Great day.
Thank you. All right.
I know that it's nice to get my writing hands going again. However much the quality may be questionable.
Well, I have to jump into office hours now, so I'm gonna leave.
All
But
right.
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Really
Bye.
appreciate it.